Alright, in this video what we're going to do is start working on the context menu. So the goal here is to make it so when I right-click an element, a context menu appears, giving me options such as removing the item or forcing it to be set as current or something like that. So let's start off with the dependencies that the context menu is going to need to work. First, we're going to need the playlist store. We're also going to need a user store as well as items. Items is going to, or rather list. List is going to be a reference to the UL for our, that has all of our items in it. So let's go ahead and alias those out to fields. I'm going to say playlist equals playlist store, users equals users store, and this money list equals money list. And before I forget, let's go ahead and satisfy these dependencies. So I'm going to jump down into list where I believe I create the context menu, and I do. Oh no, I create the sort there. I create this context menu in playlist.js, don't I? Yep, playlist context menu component right here on playlist.js. So let's go ahead and satisfy those dependencies. We're passing in playlist, we're passing in users, and we're also going to have to pass in the items. So for the items, we're going to pass in the lists element. So to do that, let's remove that so we get some more space. To do that, we're passing in list money element. And there we go. So that is our context menu. And so now let's go ahead and jump into our context menu and start working on it. The first step of course, is going to be having it being shown and hidden, depending on if we when we right-click elements and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with some styles. I'm going to go into playlist SCSS. We won't be able to watch these styles actually affect our context menu, but we're going to need them in place for it to be positioned properly. So I'm going to do those styles first, and then we'll color it and all that fun stuff later. So how about underneath toolbar, but before playlist items, I'll add another section for our context menu. And for this, I'm simply going to do section.playlist.context menu. And inside the context menu, we're going to give it a z-index of 100. And we're going to give it a left of 0 and a right of 0 and a box sizing of border box. We're going to give it a display of none, a position of absolute, a background of lighten, background-panel by 10%, and then a border of 5px solid lighten our border panel by 10%. And the only other rule that I want to give this is going to be and open, and then we're going to set display block. So basically what you can see here is it's an absolutely positioned element that's going to be you know, with the left of 0, instead of right of 0, I could also have said width equals 100%. It would have had the same difference. But the idea is the context menu is absolutely positioned. It fills the width of the playlist items or whatever its parent element is. And by default, it's hidden. But if we add the open class to it, then it gets shown. So with that, let's go ahead and work more on our playlist. So I'm going to close this out if you want to take one last look at it. And let's come over here to the playlist context menu. And I'm going to say onattach, or underscore onattach, rather. Let's start off by creating our buttons. I'm going to say const money play button equals, and then we're going to pass in a template string. Of course, we do need to actually go about importing jQuery, so let's do that before I forget. Well, it's not like ESLint would let me forget, but still, you know what I'm saying. And then let's just go ahead and do ahref equals, remember, template strings allow you to do multi-line strings, which is really handy. Class equals play, and the a tag, and then do I class equals fa play dash circle, followed by the text play. So that's our play button. Now let's go ahead and create our delete button. So const delete button equals, and then inside of template strings, ahref equals that, class equals delete, close the a tag, and then go ahead and do I class equals fa trash, and then delete. And that's our delete button. And actually, I want to punctuate both of these with an append to this element, so that we append it to the actual context menu. Otherwise, they won't be added to the DOM, in which case nothing would happen. I am going to go ahead and ESLint disable the these no unused vars real fast because we're not going to be using them for a little bit. So I'm going to say ESLint, or ESLint, let's see, ESLint dash disable, and then, well, that'll disable all of ESLint. I just want to say no unused vars. There we go. So it stops yelling at us and we actually can get it to build, because we are going to have, we're going to do this in stages. The first stage is going to be, we want to be able to open and close the menu. And to do that, I'm going to use a Reactive Extensions subject to keep track of what item is currently selected, and then I'm going to build this in terms of streams. And it's going to look really weird to people who might not be so familiar with this, but what I'm about to show you is a great example of using Reactive Extensions and thinking in terms of Reactive Extensions, or just the observable, the whole reactive programming paradigm. So let's start off by importing subject from RxJS. And once we have that, I'm going to scroll down here on attached, and I'm going to say const selected item equals new subject. Then I'm going to say const open menu on item money equals observable, which we have to import observable too. So import observable. So equals observable dot from event no default this underscore items, or list rather, context menu, and I'll explain this in a second, map, event goes into money event target, closest, li, data, component. So what's going on here? I'm creating a context menu event handler. The context menu event happens when you right click on an element. And I'm creating that on the entirety of the list. But then what I'm doing is I'm extracting out the closest li. So it's going to look up. So the event.target is the thing you actually right-clicked on, the element you actually right-clicked on. But then I walk up the hierarchy, finding the closest li parent, and I'm extracting his data component. Now remember, you have to remember two things to understand this code. First of all, in our list, all of the individual li's are element components, right? The second thing you have to remember is that our element components automatically add a data element called component, pointing to the component instance that the element is being controlled from. So by doing closest li data component, I'm going to get the playlist item component out of whatever was clicked on, and that's really awesome. Next up, I'm going to create another event called close menu money equals observable from event body mouse up. So whenever the mouse up event happens anywhere on the body, we'll trigger this close menu, but we don't want that to happen all the time. For example, if we click on the context menu, we don't want that to result in the menu being closed. So how do we filter that out? Well, we filter that out by saying filter event goes into, and then we're going to say event.target.closest li.selected, comma, context menu dot length equals 0. So I'm saying, by the way, the selected class is going to be added when that item is open in the context menu. So what I'm saying is, if you have a mouse up event and it's not a descendant of either the context menu or the selected item, then omit this close menu. All right, so how can we do our final thing? Actually, this should not be selected item. This should be selected item subject. So how do we combine these three things to get a stream that represents the currently selected item? Well, const selected item money equals observable merge, and we're going to merge open menu on item, close menu, and selected item subject. Then I'm going to say filter this users is logged in, and then share. So this stream, when you subscribe to this stream, you will get the currently selected item, and if that item changes or not. So I think that's awesome. So this is us using React, and you have to think backwards, where you have to think from the bottom up instead of the top down when looking at code like this. But again, we're describing how we want to know when an item is selected based in a very declarative way. We say, okay, when we right click on the list and we find a component, then we have a new item. If we click anywhere else on the document, then we no longer have that item. And we also have the selected item subject, which we can use to override either of these things too. Because I can say selected item subject dot next null if I wanted to override them and set the selected item to null. Anyway, so now let's go ahead and actually open or close the menu when we right click on an element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let last item equals null, and then selected item money dot comp subscribe this, and then I'm going to say item, or how about current, or how about just item? Item's fine. And item will either be a playlist item component, or it'll be null. So I'm going to say if last item, then I'm going to say last item is selected is false. If not item, then this element remove class open, and last item equals null, and return. Or how about, actually, let's see here. After we set the last item, I'm actually going to say last item equals item. And then I'm going to say if not item, then this remove class open. This means that we clicked on something and we want to close the menu. And then I'm going to say item.selected equals true. This element add class open. Now I need to position the context menu. So let's see if this code works first. We do have to go into our playlist item component and add an isSelected property. So let's do that. Let's go to our list, and down here on our playlist item component, I'm going to say set isSelected. Whoops, it should be isSelected down here. I messed that up. Set isSelected is selected this set class, and we'll do selected is selected. All right. So now I should be able to pop open Chrome, refresh, and when I right click, the context menu should open. Let's see if that's happening. So, well, let's first see if we're getting any errors. We're not getting any errors, so that's a good first thing. Actually, let's refresh again because we might... Oh, never mind. We're not logged in. That's why. All right. If we right-click, check that out. Our context menu appears. But if I click off, so the context menu appears, and the item gets highlighted, right? So that's cool. But it seems that clicking off isn't working. Because when I click off somewhere, it should be hidden. So let's figure out what's going on there. We scroll up to the top. Our close menu is observable from event, body, mouse up, which is correct. Event target closest li.selected or context menu length equals 0. Let's console log out this. Let's console log out item. Come back here into Chrome, and then watch our console. Do that. Okay, so we get the mouse up, and then we get the context menu. So we have mouse event, mouse event. Oh, that's what I did wrong. My close menu, it's publishing events. So instead I'm going to say map to null. So I want to map all of these events to simply null. So let's come back. There we go. So now if I click off, notice how the context menu disappears. So there we go. Now we can remove this console log item. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and position our context menu. So we know it's being opened. Now we need to position it. So I'm going to say const context menu height equals this element outer height. And then I'm going to say const item height equals item element outer height. So these are going to be just little helpers here. And then we'll do const item position equals item element dot position top. And I'm going to say const target position. Now, this is going to be a little funky. I'm going to say const target position equals item position plus item height plus context menu height is greater than this. And then I'm going to pass in this list at 0 scroll height question mark item position minus context menu height or item position plus item height. And then I'm finally going to say this element CSS top is target position. So why do you think I have that ternary in there? Well, the answer is if we're all the way at the bottom, if we're right-clicking on the element all the way at the bottom, we want the context menu to appear above the item. Otherwise, we want the context menu to appear below the item. So we're saying if our target top is greater than the scroll height of the list, that means we need to make it appear on top of the element. Otherwise, we need to make it appear below the element. So let's come back here and check that out. It works. And then to test that logic that makes it appear above the element if it's too high, let's go ahead and add in some elements. Oh, check that out. Our items are being added right where they should be, right after the current item. That's awesome. So come down here to the bottom, right-click, check that out. Now it appears at the top instead. Actually, it seems to always be appearing at the top. Nope, now it's not. All right, can't find ID item with ID of 14. That's interesting. But if I were to reload, it is indeed working. Seems that after adding an item, it didn't add. It wasn't able to find it. So I wonder if in playlist list where that error would be. That's cannot find component for. That wasn't the error we were getting, but that shouldn't matter because in our add we do add it to our items map. So it looks like the error would be in our playlist store. So if we open up our store's playlist and scroll down to op add, make sure we're not doing anything silly here. Oh, we never add it to our map. When we add an item, we never add it to our item map. Let's go ahead and fix that real fast. I'm going to say state map at source ID equals source. So make sure in your playlist store you fix that. Otherwise, you'll get that error that I was just getting. All right, let's come back here and refresh. The last thing I want to do is style our context menu a little bit, but we can do that now that we can open it. So I'll right-click it to open it, and then I'll come over here and we'll go and we'll open our playlist SCSS. And then for our context menu, I'm going to go ahead and say greater than A, and I'll say padding is 5 pixels, color is color highlight. So we're already working there. Text decoration is none. Display is flex. Then we'll grab our I and say order is 1. Margin left is auto. So there we go. And then we'll say and hover is going to be background is background panel. So now we have our hover. And then I'll say and dot delete background is darken color danger 5%. So our delete is now red. And I'll say and hover background is darken color danger 10%. Whoops. It's not how you spell danger. And then we fix that, and then it all dies for some reason. Something interesting happened there. Not entirely sure. Let's refresh. Now go ahead and enter a username because we can't do that until we log in. It looks like we're still having a bit of an issue with our positioning. So let's go ahead and figure that out real fast before we call it here. And it seems just messed up just a little bit with the box model. For the item position, it's not actually item element position top. It's actually element at 0. So we get the straight up HTML or DOM element without jQuery added, and then we do offset top. So go ahead and do that. Save that out. Refresh just for good measure for you guys, and then I'll come over here, and as we right click, now everything is indeed positioned correctly. All right, so that's it for our context menu for now. Until the next video, and we'll see you guys then.